I'm headed to Nashville, Tennessee to meet Carey Bringle, owner of Peg Leg Porker in the Gulch District. Join me as I eat my weight in West Tennessee style ribs and ride in a real barbecue elevator. I find Carey hard at work in the pits.
This is Steve Dresch.
Hey.
Steve is my right leg man. And I don't need a right hand man, I got two hands. So he's my right leg man. He runs the pits back here. He's in charge of this whole pit and commissary area. Out here they're pulling ribs off the pit right now. So I've got Ryan over here pulling butts. I've got Doug right here is pulling ribs. And Williams over here pulling stuff off the pit. We got a young pit crew. They're doing a great job. They've got the nickname of Pit Boys to Men. They've got a singing group at night. And so they know this isn't the end of the road. Pulled off a bunch of ribs. We use a loin back rib, which is the most expensive rib, and it's kind of like the, filet mignon of ribs. And they're hard to cook, so these guys got to be real vigilant. And we use a 2 1/4 down peeled loin back rib. And so what they're doing right now is those ribs are cooked on that smoker with nothing on them except for kosher salt and hickory smoke. And then what makes our rib different than most is it's a dry rib, a true West Tennessee dry rib, which was originated by the Burgess family of Rendezvous in Memphis. They're actually Greeks. And so our ribs come off, they get wrapped in food service film for service, and we do that so that they don't lose any moisture. If we were to wrap in aluminum foil, they'd continue to cook and they would lose moisture. And so we don't want to do that. And so this keeps them as fresh as they can be. Once they go onto the line, they get unwrapped, and then they get hit with our signature dry seasoning. It's not a rub, it's a seasoning. And so that dry seasoning is what gives it the taste of peg leg. And it's and that seasoning, because it hadn't been cooked in the pit, you get the full flavor of the rib, the full flavor of the pork, and then you get the brightness of the spices without cooking any of the flavor out of it. And that's what makes our ribs special and very unique. A lot of people will tell you they're cooking dry ribs. They may be a great rib, but most of the time they're not done that way, and they're not a real dry rib. They just pre-rub them, smoke them, and they don't put any sauce on them and say that's a dry rib. That's not a real West Tennessee dry rib. And so we don't pull the pork until you order the pork. So we don't pull it and let it sit in a hot table to dry out and get mealy and get, crusty. We've got a good bark on it. It's got great flavor and great moistness. And so it stays wrapped up. And my girls reach into that pouch and they pull that straight from the butt to order. And that's what keeps a moist and juicy sandwich and a moist and juicy pork plate.
All right, what do we have here?
So this is a 40-gallon batch of our barbecue sauce. So we make this in-house probably 3 times a week for the restaurant, and this is to serve at the restaurant.
I have never been in a barbecue restaurant that has an elevator. I feel like barbecue Batman right now.
There you go.
The 3rd floor of Peg Leg Porker is a culinary loft, and it's amazing.
This is legit the barbecue Batcave.
Yeah, so we built it so that we could film and I could shoot videos and
wow.
And then also if we wanted to teach a class or have somebody else come in and teach a class.
I think I've just stumbled on a national treasure. Let me show you. What is this, Carey?
That's our Peg Leg Porker bourbon. That's the 8-year-old bottle and our 15-year-old Pitmaster Reserve.
Whoa.
So we're distributed in about 10 states now, about to be in about 12, and then we'll eventually go nationwide.
What's your earliest barbecue memory? Because, I mean, you've had a whole lifetime of doing this in some way or shape or form.
Yeah, I think, probably my earliest barbecue memory was with my grandmother. She would take me and we would go eat at barbecue places all around West Tennessee. And we would go to this place called Lewis's Store, and I think my grandfather had delivered their children, and they had silver dollars in the floor. So I distinctly remember that memory. And then
cool.
Other than that, it'd be sitting beside my grandfather Jack on the other side of the family in his backyard cooking on that old PK, just smoking burgers or doing those country back ribs.
And I mean, did you ever realize like you were doing something? Like, did it have a feel or a pull to you when you were back there smoking, back there grilling?
Yeah, I mean, it was always important to me, and I really loved it and loved the flavor. You know, and then in high school, my grandmother, Eva Jean, or we called her E.G., she would clip out every article about barbecue, every article about Memphis in May, about the pitmasters in Memphis who had won, and so she would send me those in high school and in college, and so she just inundate me with barbecue, you know,
so that you didn't forget
information, and it was something that was very valued by our family. Although nobody in my family was in the barbecue business, it was something that was very valued in my family.
How did all this happen?
So I've been cooking barbecue for about 35 years. My family's from West Tennessee. It was sort of bred into me. My grandparents were all about barbecue. My grandfather delivered a lot of the children of barbecue families in West Tennessee.
Ooh.
And he grew up in Covington, which was a rural community. They were all farmers. And then my grandparents on my mother's side were also into barbecue, and so I used to cook with my grandfather Jack, just on an old PK in the backyard. We would smoke burgers and do what they called country back ribs back then, which are just cut off the butt. And so then it evolved. I started cooking with my Uncle Bruce when I was in high school, and he competed in the very first Memphis in May. And then he taught me how to smoke a turkey, and then from there I would cook in high school and in college. And then after college I joined a barbecue team. We competed in Memphis in May. I've been doing that for 29 years.
I was going to say, you've been a staple in
and so I was in healthcare and in IT, and then I decided to go into barbecue, and so about 8.5 years ago I opened the Peg Leg Porker, and since then we've grown, and now we're about to open another place called Bringle's Smoking Oasis.
So you said that you did healthcare and IT.
I did.
So how did you go from that, like corporate world, number crunching, crazy hours?
Yeah.
How did you go from that to being like, you know what, stop all this and get to barbecue? Barbecue
was always a hobby, and it was always something that I did on the side, whether it was for weddings or some caterings. And it was something that I knew I eventually wanted to open a restaurant. And finally I decided, I thought I may not do it until I retired. And then finally I decided to take the plunge.
Was there any fear on your part? Or
yeah.
Like, I mean, what was going through your head?
Listen.
I'm doing this. Oh my God, I'm doing this.
Yeah, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of hesitancy. You know, my family was afraid. We put everything that we had on the line. I mean, literally every dime that we had went into this. If we lost it, we were going to lose everything. And, you know, my family was concerned. Outside my immediate family, my mother was concerned. I picked this location at the time. This area was fairly blighted. There was not much around us. And people asked me, they were like, are you sure you want to go there? You know, you kind of...
Because it was not the gulch that we know today. It was not the gulch that
we know it today, no. And so now it's grown up around us, and it's been tremendous. But it was very scary. Luckily, I had gone out and put myself out there enough for enough years before I opened the restaurant that people knew who we were, and they anticipated the opening of the restaurant. And I would encourage anybody that does this to do that, to get out there and you know, you can start with a trailer or you can start with a food truck and get your name and your reputation out there, get a following, and then it's not as scary when you open. You know, it's still scary because you got bigger obligations, but it's not.
You have a real building, like, oh my gosh.
And so, but it's, you know, it eases the transition. Trying to just cut off Stark and go into something is tough.
Why did you pick this spot? What about this?
So I originally signed a lease a block away. I waited. They were getting rid of a tenant. And I waited patiently for a year while I went through the process of getting that tenant out.
Eviction. And
then I signed the lease, and I signed what was supposed to be a 5-year deal with 2 5-year options. We signed it. The owner of the space was supposed to co-sign, you know, right there, part of the contract. And they came back to me and they said, we only want to do it for 5 years, not for the 2 options. And so I walked away from that deal because I just don't do business that way. And I had looked at this building. I really liked it because it was a cinder block building with no windows, and that was kind of the feel and the look I wanted. And I was able to buy this building. And so I bought the building, and you know, at the time my wife said, well, that may be the best thing that ever happened to us. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I had picked that location. It was ready. I waited a year, but she was right. Yeah. And then it was the best thing ever happened to us.
We are usually always right. I just want you to know this.
And so she was right, and this was the best thing ever happened to us. We were able to buy our property, so we own our stuff. We don't have any partners or any investors. We did initially. He was a great partner. I bought him out, and then so we're 100% family owned and operated, and we've been very fortunate, and we've got a great staff that's helped bring us to this level.
What inspired your menu to be what it is?
So the menu that we have now is the same menu that we started with. Okay. We may have added 1 or 2 items. We wanted to be real Tennessee barbecue, which is strictly pork and chicken. We weren't going to do bread. We weren't going to try and be everything to everybody here at this restaurant. This was going to be a very narrow focus on dry ribs and pulled pork, and Yardbirds half chicken and wings, and then a traditional Memphis cheese plate, which is sausage and cheese. We call it Memphis sushi. I put my grandmother's pimento cheese. My grandmother's pimento cheese is on the menu. So it's a very narrow focus. We only have 6 sides. We have just a very few proteins, and it allows us to focus on being the best at what we do. Our new restaurant will be Texas style, but it'll be more beef focused, and it won't be the dry ribs. It won't be a peg leg porker. It's a completely different name, completely different concept. Ooh. And so there's one peg leg porker. We want there to be one peg leg porker, and it be a destination and
which
an iconic spot.
I had to fight. I had to fight to find parking for my ginormous RV because everybody was coming here today. It's definitely a destination. With all of this, what do you hope is going to be your legacy? What do you hope to accomplish? Like, at the end of the day, what do you want to look back on from a mountaintop and see that you created?
I'd like the peg leg to be around for 50 years. I'd like it to be, we set out to be like restaurants that we admired, like the Rendezvous in Memphis, which is a staple. It's a iconic place. There's one, and we wanted to be the Rendezvous of Nashville. So, and that's an ode to those guys and what they've built and the culture that they've got around it, and that we wanted families. We want people to want to bring their family here. We want them to have their rehearsal dinner here. We want them to have us cater their most special family events, and so that's the legacy that I hope that I leave, is that peg leg porker played a part in my life. As somehow it was involved in the most important moments of my life. I want other people to feel that way, and we've got some folks that have made it their family tradition to come here certain days of the year, and I absolutely love that. I'm flattered and humbled. So
I love this. I love this so much.
I came to Peg Leg Porker as a fan, but I'm leaving as a friend. Carey Bringle and his staff are amazing, and their love is evident in every side and every meat. And of course, I enjoy getting hazed by Blue.
You ain't ready. Get ready. She ain't ready.
This is so delicious.
Delicious. She still ain't ready.